foster better relationships. You might wonder how to thrive in today's fast-paced and interconnected world, where collaboration, feedback, and work-life balance play vital roles in our productivity and well-being. Today, we'll share valuable insights on how we can develop collaborative relationships, use feedback as a powerful tool for growth, and find a delicate balance between work and life. First, let's talk about collaboration, the art of building strong connections that fuel creativity and innovation. In a world where ideas flow freely, collaborating with others can be a game changer. By embracing diverse perspectives and pooling our talents, we unlock a treasure trove of possibilities. Let's break down silos and foster an environment where collaboration flourishes, where we support each other's ideas and celebrate shared success. Communication for collaborative relations. We will present you the ION method. This theory emphasizes the essential principles and techniques for effective communication to foster collaborative relationships among individuals or teams. The ION method focuses on four key elements: intention, openness, active listening, and non-defensive communication. Each element plays a critical role in building and maintaining successful collaborative relationships. Intention. The foundation of collaborative communication is setting clear intentions. It involves being purposeful and mindful of one's communication goals. Emphasize the significance of maintaining a positive and constructive attitude when communicating with others to foster a collaborative environment. Openness. Openness refers to being receptive and approachable during communication. It involves sharing thoughts, ideas, and feedback with sincerity and without judgment. Emphasize the importance of creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable expressing their opinions and concerns openly. Active listening. Active listening is a fundamental skill for effective communication. It involves fully concentrating on what others are saying, understanding their message, and responding thoughtfully. We encourage you asking clarifying questions and paraphrasing to confirm understanding. Non-defensive communication. Non-defensive communication focuses on responding to feedback or criticism without becoming defensive or hostile. We encourage the use of I instead of you statements when expressing concerns to avoid blame and foster a collaborative problem-solving approach. By incorporating these principles into your daily interactions, you will be better equipped to establish and maintain strong collaborative relations in a various personal and professional contexts. Feedback. Feedback is a powerful development tool that plays a vital role in personal and professional growth. It provides valuable insights, identifies areas of improvement, and fosters a culture of continuous learning. Let's explore how to ask for feedback and how to offer it effectively. Firstly, when asking for feedback, it is crucial to be specific and provide context. By clearly defining the area or task we seek feedback on, we help others understand the situation better. It's also essential to choose the right timing and avoid asking for feedback during busy or stressful periods, for example, ensuring the person can give you their full attention. Asking open-ended questions encourages detailed responses and allows us to gain deeper insights. By requesting actionable feedback, we can receive concrete suggestions for improvement, avoiding vague or overly critical feedback. Additionally, selecting the right people to seek feedback from is essential. We should reach out to individuals with relevant expertise or experience to get valuable perspectives. Having an open mindset, it is crucial when asking for feedback. Embracing both positive feedback and areas for development shows our commitment to growth. Regardless of the feedback's nature, expressing gratitude is essential, as it demonstrates appreciation for the person's time and insights. Now, let's shift our focus to offering feedback to others. When providing feedback, we can use the SBI model, situation, behavior, and impact. By structuring feedback this way, we help others understand the specific context, behavior observed, and its impact. Being specific and objective in our feedback is essential. We should focus on behaviors or actions rather than making personal attacks or generalizations. A balanced approach involves recognizing strengths and achievements while offering constructive feedback for improvement. Above all, offering feedback should be supportive and encouraging. It's essential to create a safe space for growth where individuals feel empowered to learn and improve. In conclusion, feedback is a powerful tool for personal and professional growth. By seeking feedback, we show our dedication to self-improvement, while offering feedback constructively helps others thrive. Embracing feedback empowers us and those around us to reach our full potential and build strong collaborative relationships. So let's value feedback as an opportunity to learn and grow together on our journey to success. Work-life balance and its importance in being productive. When we neglect work-life balance, the consequences can be severe. Many of us experienced or witnessed the adverse effects of overworking and neglecting our personal lives, such as burnout, stress, or lower productivity. On the other hand, when we prioritize work-life balance, numerous benefits emerge. Improve mental health, increase productivity, better physical health, and the list can continue. Now we will end this sub-module with a quote by Helen Keller, who says that alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. What do you think about it?